Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fill Before Shill episode 1, the show where we fill all of our bags before shilling them to you guys, our loyal viewers. Just kidding. Kind of, sort of. Anyway, my name is Roy Blackstone. I'm joined here by my panel today. So Sherman, I guess we should start with you. You're the man of the hour. You are the man on a mission. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me, Mr. Roy Blackstone, aka Phil Before Shill, aka Startail. I don't even know which one is your real self at this point.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a brand identity problem, but we'll figure it out.
I'm Sherman Lee. I have a single identity, but don't fall for any of the Telegram scams. Sorry. Wait. 1 second. I apologize.
Busy man. Well, all right. Okay, we can go to Greedy Ferengi. Mark, you can start. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Mark the Negus, aka Greedy Ferengi on Twitter. What do I do? Basically, I research and analyze tech within the space and
really
write long-winded articles about it, and also reports for various people for investment, etc. And work on projects.
Yep. So I brought Greedy Ferengi on the Grand Negus because, well, he's a little bit better at tech than I am. So I figured why not get a little bit of help. So we also are joined by the CTO of Raven Protocol at curious_RV, Rahul. Introduce yourself.
Hey everyone. Good to be here. Thanks a lot, Roy and Mark, for having me here. Yeah, I've been in machine learning, deep learning, and all sorts of technology around that for over 8 to 9 years now, kind of dabbling around with the technology and working on it for a long time. Came around this problem, and then Sherman and I collaborated together, and we're like, let's do it. And that's where we are right now.
Yep. Sounds good. So I don't know if Sherman is ready yet. Sherman, you there?
What's up?
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So I guess for the viewers here, our loyal viewers, we don't actually have viewers yet, but we will. So trust me.
I'm a loyal one. You have one.
Oh, that's true. Well, look, they're gonna look at the videos 10 years from now. They're gonna look at the masterpiece that was the Phil Before Show YouTube channel. They're gonna look at this video as the genesis of something great. So I'm expecting billions of views. Anyway,
absolutely.
For those guys, tell us a little bit about Raven Protocol, because there is a little bit of hype around it on Twitter. There's some talk about it, but there's a lot of people who are still kind of on the fence about it. They don't know too much. They're curious about it. So can you give us just a general breakdown of Raven Protocol? What's its aims are, what's its goals, what its goal is, and information on that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really, really simple concept and a very simple use case. We do decentralized and distributed AI training. And our core focus is on the speed of that training, and it's all done in the distribution framework. If you're familiar with different methods like Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud, running TensorFlow, training in a 1 million image data set could take 2 or 3 weeks. And in our very, very early projections, we could break that down into 2 or 3 hours. That's pretty much at a high level of what we're aiming to accomplish. Obviously, in the bigger vision, we'll have a whole marketplace around AI services and data and things like that. But until we get there, the computing resource is our core focus right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so there you have it. They're going to take over Google. They're going to beat Google. They're going to do it better. There you have it, folks. End of show. So I suppose the most important thing that is on everyone's mind lately has been the collaboration with Binance. Pretty legendary collaboration. Pretty sick, if I may say so myself, as we say in the tech world. Tell us about the IDO. What was the process of the IDO? How did you come up with it? Who came up with it? Was it someone internal to the team? How did that whole process begin? You know, was it something that you just kind of decided right away? Hey, let's do this. You know, we're going to launch. Let's do, I don't know, IDO. Let's sell tokens to people. Or was it something that was planned for a long time? Because some people are look at this differently. Some people say, well, we're going to get our project on Binance in 3 years, or our 1 year plan. But you instead, it was kind of very quick. It was like, now we're doing an IDO. It's like, what's an IDO? I don't know. Let's do it.
Oh man, it is a really crazy story. So first I'll say, like, we announced that IDO on Friday, the 14th of June, right? And it actually happened on the 17th. So we executed the whole thing as a really small team in 3 days. So I guess in a sense, we kind of jumped into it not knowing what would happen. But our plan was initially to list on the 17th anyway. And the community, they kept asking us, like, what can we do? What can we do to help you guys to make a really big a launch? They want to make sure that Raven gets in front of a lot of people. And ideas started flowing around. They're like, you're listing on Binance DEX. Do they have something like, I don't know, a DEX launchpad? And we're like, well, I guess they don't, but should we create it? So this was really born out of the community. So everyone gave really good ideas on how to execute it in such a short time frame. In the end, we took a very similar model to how BitTorrent ran it, first come, first serve. And obviously, it didn't have optimal user experiences because a lot of people couldn't get in. But it proved that there was a huge demand for the Binance DEX and the Binance Chain ecosystem, because we had over 2,000 people who wanted to get in, and they just couldn't. So you can see that once the launch happened, it sold out really quickly in less than a second. And then our Telegram just got rushed. So I would say it was a really great experience. Binance Chain and Binance DEX, they had nothing to do with it. Because it's a DEX, right? They have no control over it. It's decentralized. It's something that was born out of the community, and we used all the existing infrastructure and technology that Binance has. All the public APIs and things like that, issuing on their chain, using their DEX. They provided a lot of those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of leads into some of the other questions. Backstepping just a little bit and going over the IDO and the whole process that was.
Yeah.
What do you see generally? Because it looks like there's going to be a lot of, let's say, imitators, or you're setting the standard. Let's put it that way. Let's say it nicely. You're setting the standard. I'm seeing a lot of talk about future IDOs, and that's great. I think it's really interesting. So we'll go into that a little bit later. But what do you think generally are the advantages of doing an IDO versus the disadvantages or the drawbacks, and especially compared to something like a traditional Binance launchpad, or even other exchange launchpads, which are also relatively new? I think the first launchpad we ever really had, I think, was Apex with Bittrex back in, when was that? 2017. That was the first one, and it was okay. And then no one did any other launchpads until Binance 2 years later. But before that, it was ICOs. Then it was IEOs on exchanges. And now we're looking at IDOs, and you were really the first ones to kind of innovate that. So do you see any benefits? Do you see any drawbacks? Do you see downsides? So what do you think?
There's a lot of benefits into IDOs. I think this is going to be a very important tool for projects and founders to raise money and have a bit of capital to scale on the execution, get more resources to build what they want to build. And that's because there's a few reasons, right? So Launchpad, IEOs, etc., they're very centralized, and you have to work closely with the exchange. You have to work closely around their timelines, and you have to work closely around what other projects are doing on the different exchanges, being very careful to capture that exposure, being able to filter out through a lot of the noise. So in a sense, because it's centralized, a lot of the projects, they're kind of have to wait around for these exchanges and do, well, whatever timeline they have. In an IDO and in the decentralized world, the founders themselves and the projects themselves, they can figure out what their own timeline is. And because they have access to their own community and the Binance DEX community, they can work really closely together with that community to figure out what is a proper timeline and a structure for a potential IDO. And you'll have that community support. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits. I guess on the downside, it's still very, very new, right? There's not a huge audience for it. If you look at the recent the DEX Launchpad Elrond, for example, how many tickets were claimed in that short amount of time? I don't remember the exact amount, but it must have been like 40,000 or something like that. Today, because it's centralized and because Binance has that kind of exposure, because they built a great company, you get that advantage. But in an IDO, you don't exactly have that advantage yet, because obviously the volume on the DEX is smaller now, but it will continue to grow bigger and bigger over time. You can see a lot of projects rushing to do it now. You can see a lot of projects who are talking about doing an IDO. I've seen QBX and Thorchain, for example. It sounds like they may do something soon in July. Let's see. In general, I'm just really excited that this is going to be enabling a lot of technology to be built. And to be perfectly fair, this couldn't have happened without a centralized entity like Binance facilitating a DEX. And
right.
I think it's amazing what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Binance, absolutely one of the power players in the space. CZ, come on the show. I'll interview you. So, second question regarding moving forward with the whole little bit more on the IDO concept. We now exist in a time, and it's a great time, where if you are a project and you're looking for funding, you now have multiple different avenues to approach. So you can go through the Launchpad route. You can go now through an IDO route. You can go through a more traditional ICO, or even a more traditional equity offering. I still see a few of those. Comparing just the blockchain specific ones, do you think there's still a place for traditional, let's say, Binance Launchpad, or do you think it's going to over time go more and more in the direction of the IDOs? What do you think? Does Binance Launchpad still have a place in this new world, or is it all IDOs all the time?
I think every single player, every single tool plays a very important role, from the equity to private sales to ICOs and IEOs. And every single founder and every single project comes in at a different point, and they have to figure out what's going to be right for their needs. I talked to another founder yesterday, and one of his main concerns was should I actually launch a token? I'm not really ready for that kind of attention and exposure. People always finding us on Telegram wanting to talk. And I said to him, if you don't want the attention and you're not ready to work closely with the community, then you're right. Maybe launching a token does not make sense for you, and you should stick to the traditional equity route. So in the future, yes, I think there will be launch pads on the SEX, and I also think that the IDOs on the DEX will play a very, very important role as well. You're going to be able to see projects. This is kind of like a breeding ground, right? It's like a safe, vetted breeding ground that is ran by the community. You have the Binance validators who do due diligence on the project. You have to create a listing proposal. You have to list out all your wallets, your funds, who your investors, and all of these things. So the community does due diligence on you and decides when you get to list on the DEX. So this actually can scale things a lot bigger than the Binance.com launchpad. But obviously, everyone's going to still, in the next, even 5 years, likely have all their eyes on the traditional launchpad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of touched on that a little bit. It was a point that I thought was pretty interesting. So I look at IDOs very similar to the way that I looked at coins launching, proof of work coins that launched in 2015 and 2016, in that they are just basically built by the community. They come out of nothing, almost seemingly. And the coins are just, they're tradable now. Everyone, you can trade them, anyone can trade them. The difference I see here that you touched upon is that there's due diligence being done on the new coins that are going through this IDO process. So whereas before we might have had coins like WorldCoin or ArchCoin, which ended up being complete disasters, we now have proper due diligence done by these validators, so on and so forth, these different teams that are technically knowledgeable, that know what they're doing, that look at these IDOs. So yeah. I think overall, we're taking a lot of the good that we had of the old kind of cypherpunky, do whatever you want, it's all the community, power to the people, right? But also looking forward, we're moving it in a way that is a lot more, let's say, I don't want to say professional, but it's a lot safer for investors. It's, if you're buying something on the Binance DEX, you know that there has been some basic level of due diligence done on the project.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas with any other proof of work coin, you have absolutely no idea what you're buying. Maybe you're buying a 99% pre-mine. Whereas with the IDO, it's a lot more transparent. So I'm glad you touched on that. The question I had for you was, so obviously, disclaimer, Binance obviously had nothing to do with the IDO. That was completely separate. But I'm sure that they gave some kind of support, that you had channels of communication open. So what kind of support has Binance provided to Raven Protocol? And following on that, do you think it's easy for future projects to kind of join in with this IDO? If I'm a project and I want to do an IDO, is it easy for me to kind of get aligned to Binance and start that comm?
Yeah. So the Binance chain team is absolutely amazing to work with. They love, like just like Binance.com, they love to just execute. They don't say, they don't chat too long, not too long phone calls. They last maybe like 15 minutes at most. It's all about getting down to the execution and launching very fast. So for example, we announced that we were going to launch our token on Binance Chain. I think like something end of May, and in that time frame, we figured out how to plan an IDO and list it by June 17th. So they love to move fast. And in terms of the support that they provide, they have really great technical people that they'll hop on a group with you in Telegram. If you have issues with the API, they'll respond really quickly. If you want to understand how to do a specific thing, they'll give you step-by-step instructions. And I mean, they're very, very accessible. And then in terms of like the Binance Chain community, I mean, like if you want to post something on the forum, if you want to go on their Telegram, all the admins, they're all very accessible as well. And so I think over time, it will become harder and harder to list on the DEX. I think it's going to be a very similar path when Binance.com first started. There was like in the early days, there was an initial rush of a lot of tokens that we never heard about before, right? And this was like really powerful for their growth, but they were great projects and they had good potential for growth. We're going to see that same thing on the DEX very soon. And then, once you reach like a lot of projects getting on and being listed, there's going to be more and more due diligence. There's going to be more and more Binance chain validators. So there is an advantage for projects right now to get into this ecosystem early and grow with it. Like for us, we were one of the first projects to do it. I think Mithril was the first, and then there's like these batch of first companies that just launched really quickly. I think there was Bolt, Atomic Wallet, SpendCoin. I probably am forgetting a bunch. There's Anchor, Red Pulse. And these are all really early adopters, and none of us knew exactly what would happen if we launched on the DEX, but we all worked really closely together to make sure that there is exposure into the communities that we had and bring them into the DEX as well. And it's proven that there's a huge demand for people that want to trade on there. It's safe. I mean, you get to have full custody of all your tokens. So it was a really great choice for us. And I think it would be a good choice for many other projects as well.
Awesome. So Raven Protocol, you raised both Ethereum and BNB, Binance Coin, as part of the sale IDO, the entire thing. There were both of these ecosystems involved. Do you get the sense that Binance is competing with Ethereum at all? Do you get the sense that they're trying to, because as a trader, we often talk about what the next big thing is, and I hear a lot of talk about Binance Coin looking to take some of that market share from Ethereum. Do you think that these two ecosystems are in opposition to each other almost, to where if you are an ICO, you can either choose to go with either Ethereum or Binance Coin, or do you think these two kind of exist on their own and can both support each other? So I wanted to know what your thoughts was on that.
I think they can and should both support each other. I mean, there's a lot of blockchains, right? And for developers, they have a very specific use case, and they carefully figure out and decide which blockchain to build on. And I think we can all grow that ecosystem together. And it sounds like Binance is already doing that because they list a lot of blockchains when they don't necessarily have to, if they wanted to be a competitor to different ones. But like, one of the really biggest advantages right now is if, let's say you're an early stage project like us at Raven, and you don't have a mainnet that's going to be launched soon. Let's say it's a year out, and you have a long roadmap, and you need to build that developer community. One of the best ways to do that is to get tokens in the hands of those people. So by launching on Binance Chain and doing that, and you don't need smart contracts yet, it is a very good way for you to engage with that community and get people excited along the way as you build. I think that's a really powerful use case for most early stage projects, which is why I don't even know the exact amount of projects that have migrated to the chain. But if you see that infographic, it looks like a lot. There's probably over 50 or 60 projects already, and it's been a couple of months, right? So they found a very specific use case, and it seems like they hit the product market fit for it. But like, if there's still always going to be projects that launch their initial tokens on Ethereum because they need smart contracts and they have a mainnet now. So I don't think both are necessarily always competing directly against each other.
Okay. You said an interesting word there in that answer, and it was build. So 2017, we were all getting really, really rich, Sherman. And then 2018 happened, and we all became really, really poor. And instead of making money, the new phrase was instead of hold, the new phrase was build, because that was all we could do. The interesting thing was that I personally saw many, many ICOs, projects, etc., kind of go down in flames. Raven Protocol was different. You guys actually were one of the very, very few projects that decided to build during the bear market. You raised most of your money, as far as I know, during the bear market. You did most of your development during the bear market, and you only now are kind of starting to release during this, let's say, perhaps the pre-bull market. So first of all, hats off to you. That was great. I thought it was amazing. You talked to me and I invested right away because I was like, this guy's a hustler. He doesn't care that the price of Bitcoin just tanked 70%. He's out here working, which was great. But now, looking back, how was that whole process of building during the bear market? Was it hard to get money? Was it hard to talk to investors? Was it hard for people to kind of listen to you? I had a discussion with Hope from Exim Chain once, and she basically said, when all the prices were really, really low a few years ago, no one wanted to talk to me about blockchain. No one was interested. But when the price went really high, all of a sudden I was the man in town. But now things are different. How was it for you during that bear market and the team?
I mean, so in the very, very early days, no one knew what we were doing. It took a lot of time to build that kind of trust and belief in us in the community. So we did in I think it was September 2018. We did raise a seed round. It was a very, very tough time, but all the people that contributed were actual believers and builders themselves. So they were in it for the technology, right? And not for the pure flips and speculations. And so this actually was an unfair advantage for us because we had all investors. They were willing to kind of hold and wait until the bear market is over. No one knew how long it would be. It could have been a year, 2 years, or 3 years. But they believed in the problem that we were solving and that we were going to be able to do it. And so I think that just that belief and confidence that the team at Raven could do it was very, very humbling. But obviously, it was a very, very hard and bleak time because we knew that we had a very unique approach to distribution, and we knew we need to kind of scale this up fast. And how could we actually do it? We spoke. I don't think we shared this with you. After that time, after we raised the seed round, we did speak with a lot of investors, and at that time, all they wanted to do was invest in equity companies. And they asked us, like, you want to just change this whole thing into an equity type thing. And we're like, well, no, that doesn't make sense because we're building a network, and the token is a core function of this network, right? And so we were one of few people that still believed in token networks, and our investors who continue to believe in us were as well. And you can see that the people that made those kinds of confident decisions were the ones that are starting to benefit as you see the bulls peak out. Obviously, just building, grinding, and staying heads down really paid off in the last year because, like as you saw in the past month, we've had a ton of momentum, and the FOMO and the hype, all that silly stuff in crypto, it finally came, it's kind of funny for us because we've been building this for a long time, and people are finally coming now and asking like, hey, what is this? Like, what is this new project? And we get to share with them like what we've been building the past year. So it's an exciting time now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it certainly sounds, like I said, you guys were one of the few teams really that were building during the bear market and actually succeeded, because a lot definitely tried and they did not succeed. So I think that's great. So I would like to move the discussion now. We've talked about IDOs, we've talked about Binance, general ecosystem. I would like to talk about Raven itself. So a lot more digging in depth into the tech questions. I know Negus, the Grand Negus, has some questions for you guys. So Negus, you can take it away.
Negus, let's do it.
Hello. Yeah. Before I dive in, one point, the IDO, you really set the benchmark for the multiple teams. For Binance, it's a learning curve. For you, it's a learning curve. But you're enabling other people to actually succeed and iron out the little kinks, as it were. And I think it went really well. Binance executed well. You executed well. There was a weak link, but it wasn't down to either one of you. I think it was the trust wallet, because that bottlenecked a little bit. That was a variable that neither party really had control of. But no doubt they will learn from that, because I think they did hear about it. And it will execute more smoothly next time for other ones. So it will, it helps you, and it helps everybody else to launch successfully as well with that level of execution. Okay, first question. How's the growth coming with users and nodes?
Growth. The growth has been just really crazy, actually. I'm like, let's take a step back again in terms of what general growth means. So, in June, we went from 2,000 Telegram members to like 28,000, and Twitter from 2,000 to 15,000. All this stuff that was leading up to the IDO as well. And like the community really rallied behind Raven and its tech. So like we were super humbled. Because our roadmap is long, right? Q1 2020 is when we're targeting the private beta, and we have around 60 companies now who are eager to be part of that beta program, and it's just great to get really direct feedback from them because like doing customer development, making sure that we're building the best possible product is really important. So that's where we are in terms of like having actual users and nodes. We don't have the private beta that's out yet, so we don't have those numbers to share with you. But like all this is down to like when you're building out this core technology and building it like a real business, is how closely are you going to be working with your customers? And once you actually have that technology built, how fast are they going to use it? So that's the agile approach that we're taking to building this thing. Rather than saying like, we're going to take, the next 6 months building silently, and then after that we'll launch, and then we'll go find some users. So that's the approach that we're taking.
Okay, next one kind of builds on that really. Addressing the Chinese market, because now you have, Li Keqiang's speech in 2014 about mass entrepreneurship, mass innovation, the AI push. I think last count, looking at about 4 or 5 months ago, you've got over 16,500 AI startups across the nation, all looking for businesses they can build, all looking for compute resource. They've got office space, they've got subsidies, they've got research resources behind them. The backing and the national momentum behind this is truly scary in terms of market potential. And all they've really got right now to look at in terms of compute resource is the Chinese equivalent of Amazon and Google, Baidu, Tencent. So I can see a screaming potential, for adoption there for something like Raven, mainly for most of these small startups who, would actually jump at something like this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you're probably on our Telegram, and you've probably noticed that every single day, maybe 2 or 3 people come and they ask us, "Hey, where's the Raven Chinese Telegram group?"
Yeah.
And they want to figure out what it is and how they can get involved and how they can use it.
If you launch that, I can see that going from like 10 users to 10,000 in a week. Seriously.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Judging by what I've been reading about the place, it's scary in terms of the growth and the potential there.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreeing to what Mark's saying, and adding to what Sherman, brother, you're telling. I mean, the point of what Raven is actually kind of getting dissolving into the ecosystem itself, kind of becoming that hidden infrastructure, right? That is what is going to give the real growth, right? And how exactly you really do dissolve into the ecosystem is by basically integrating with every possible use case, right? Becoming that foundation layer, right? Which basically gets that. So the real growth, and absolutely correct that China is booming with AI and all the use cases that are there. The real growth will come in when it becomes that foundation layer where no one cares what exactly is happening, where exactly is the model being trained. Is it on a traditional cloud provider, or is it on Raven or its equivalent, right? No one cares. And that is where the real adoption will come from.
Yeah, there's also a feature of the Chinese mainland market which is pretty unique globally, because the validity of the model that's trained, how effectively it trains and how effectively it works in service of its use case, is determined by 3 things: quality of the algorithm, availability of compute resource, and how rich the data sets are and how big they are as well. China has this online to offline model of data sets, which is way richer in terms of user behavior than anything we see outside, which I think, regardless of the compute power or where it comes from, as you said, it's the data sets and the backing behind it that is.
So it's more complete there, mostly because
there's way more depth in it.
It's exactly. There's way more depth in it, and you can't replicate that anywhere else. To be very honest, right? You can't replicate that. Why? Because their governments can do anything that they want to, right?
Also, they went straight from cash to mobile payments.
Absolutely, that is there. Like this is recording everything. Like you have a digital identity, an exact replica of what you're doing in physical world.
Yeah. It's the depth of the data sets in China, which is peculiar to the Chinese market and how they use the internet, the mobile internet, that isn't replicated anywhere else. Yeah, I think that's a strategy definitely going forward. I was just curious as to how you're addressing that with anybody you knew in China.
Yeah. I mean, we have pretty key partnerships to do that as well, to help us enter the market, help us understand the different distribution channels, how to get into the different corporations. So you may have heard of NGC Ventures. Used to be Neo Global Capital. They invested in us. We're working closely with DAP.com, which integrates a lot of different blockchains. So we're trying to understand how can we work with these different partners. So they're based out of Beijing, who already are working with blockchain companies. Can we build an AI and machine learning SDK into those blockchains so that those DApp developers can easily train models as well? And so these are people that help us really understand and enter those markets, both from a community perspective, encouraging us to open a Chinese Telegram, for example, and also making the right introductions for actual enterprise and user adoption.
Oh, Mark, are you? Did you cut off? Oh,
I was just putting up a link for Sherman. There you go. It's in chat.
Oh, okay. There you go.
There is another extensive one. As I mentioned, I was reading Kai-Fu Lee's book. That's his VC company.
Okay.
That's been on the ground there for about 20 years. Ex-head Google Asia, ex-head Microsoft Asia, and he's been around since basically before WeChat even started. And the connections there are very, very useful. I should think you might want to have a chat with him.
Okay.
Well, look at that. Literal action connections being made on the Phil Before Show. That's why we're the best here.
Okay, what is the next one? Let's have a look. What did I have here? Right. Has there been any reaction from the big cloud providers, Raven? Just curious, over the last 6 months.
Can you repeat that question, Mark? I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Has there been any reaction from the big cloud providers as Raven over the last 6 months? I was curious. You getting any more attention? Anybody rattling your cage, as it were?
People do that. The thing is, they don't react in public.
Obviously not. I was just curious.
They don't react in public, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, you know what they're actually doing is they're right now, as we speak, they're on the DEX and they're buying all of the Raven tokens that they can possibly afford, which is actually all of them. So they now own 99% of Raven. This is our future now. This is what we have to get used to. Raven, sponsored by Google.
If you step back to about 12 months ago until now, and you were grinding away in the bear market, building, maxing out the design, implementing things, what was the hardest part in terms of the grind? Do you think, in terms of the build? What was the hardest, box to tick and task to fill? Just curious.
Go for it, brother.
I mean, there's no single thing that is just extremely hard. They're all extremely hard,
Yeah,
right?
and they all link together. Yeah.
So like everything has been, like how we've been building, we've been doing it one step at a time, brick by brick, layer by layer. There was like no overnight success, although a lot of people do just assume that it was overnight success and we got really lucky. I mean, we were lucky, right? It was because we were hustling and heads down the whole time. We stuck our ears really close to the ground and got incredibly lucky with the timing and the market and everything like that, to be able to have the resources that we do. So I was gonna say like that was the hardest part, but it was a culmination of a year of being heads down, doing a million small things. I would say just like at a kind of an emotional level, the hardest thing about building this whole thing was doing it through the bear market. It was a very, very, like, it was a really tough time. A lot of people were just throwing in the towel. Like so many of my friends who were either just crypto investors or they were even some founders, they kind of just gave up. They're like, you know what? I did a token sale. My token price has dropped. I'm out of cash. I'm just kind of done. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go try to raise some money with equity right now, and trying to have that, like the team, just trying to have that confidence in ourselves that the world isn't going to explode and die was the most challenging time, because I'm sure Rahul agrees with this. When we're trying to hire deep learning engineers and they looked at like, oh, crypto, this isn't a great business or industry to be in right now. They're like, maybe we should get a traditional job at Google instead. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. It was just the market conditions. Like on the technical side, partnerships and everything like that. They are hard, but they're much more easy to overcome than the macro levels that we had to face.
Yeah, that kind of colors everything, doesn't it? It bleeds into everything during a bear. There's this kind of background context that colors people's perceptions, when you have to actually achieve something there. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, next one, hypothetical question. This sounds so tacky. Never mind. It's still valid in a way. If you had a time machine and you could go forward 3 years from now, in terms of user base, size of network, partnerships, where do you see Raven? 3 years down the roadmap.
Absolutely. Mark, to answer
Not
that,
necessarily in an ideal world, just where do you see it? Up to you.
To answer that in one sentence, everywhere where AI is, and be that sole AI service provider, whatever be it, from providing the right algorithms to providing the infrastructure to providing the use cases, everywhere. And that is where we are headed, Sherman. Tell them about the whole vision that we are painting right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know many of you have not read the white paper, but if you dig into it, you can kind of understand the world that we see. Blockchain is going to be transforming the AI industry, and there's very three key pillars to that. One is that blockchain itself enables the sharing of training data. Two, it's the sharing of research algorithms. And three, it's the sharing of compute resources. And so today, you can see that the AI plus blockchain industry is completely at its infancy, but it makes complete sense for the two to be together. Like it actually is a true fit for decentralization because of these large data sets and the need to find these computing resources. We can properly incentivize people on the supply side and on the demand side for making sure that we build out this network. So again, in the white paper, you can probably figure out that after our core focus today is in the computing resources. That is our speed of the AI training. But if all that played out, you can see us being a central, or I'm sorry, more like a decentralized marketplace. I mean, obviously central in terms of where people will think of first in terms of branding and community to come to purchase different AI services, find different research algorithms, find different training sets for them to use and train their models. We want it to be a very simple and easy way for any developer to plug AI and machine learning into their application and into whatever that they're building.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep.
That has to definitely be the pitch to your Chinese VCs.
No. Here's hold on. No. Let me give you the real pitch,
because that's what they're screaming for.
I have the real pitch. Are you ready for this real pitch right here? This is like the Roy Blackstone hot take of the day. All right. Here's what you do. You buy all of the Raven tokens. So that means you can incentivize all of the algos and networks and everything you want to. You incentivize all of the market and investing and high-frequency trading algos to go buy as much Raven as they can. So then you pump the price of Raven. So I don't know, let's say 10, 15, $20 billion. And then we all retire, we all go to a yacht, we all have fun, and that's the end of Raven Protocol. Good story, right?
Well, that's no fun.
It's so fun. All right. We'll build a giant mechanical Raven then. How about that? That's more fun.
And fly it around the world.
There it is. We'll fly over Mordor.
The journey is what's fun, right? Like to be honest, like I understand that a lot of the crypto community is in it for the investment and the returns and the money. But if you just like technology in general, you'll see that we're living through like a really special moment in time, and it's just like this hasn't ever happened before, and we're very lucky to be alive and be a part of this journey and really work on something that's going to be a core part of our future for the next generation, for our children. I think that's what's going to be exciting.
Seriously.
That was pretty good. Yeah, someone needs to get a clip of that, of you saying that to the background of Time by Hans Zimmer, because that was pretty epic.
I mean, it gets me every day about thinking about how my kids, one's 13, the other one's 7 in a couple of weeks, they're never going to have bank accounts. Yeah. If you think about that, that is, and I'm going to, they see me using a debit card now, and then probably my daughter in about 10 years is going to pick up some crappy old debit card out of some cupboard in the house and go, Dad, what's this? Yeah? That's quite a scary thought, really, and a good thought as well. But also in terms of AI, being alive now means, I don't know how much you're familiar with the nexus and the singularity of the conversions of technologies, as it were. What we're seeing now is really the first effective steps towards that. So it's quite an exciting time to be around.
And Rams will be a part of that.
Very much so. Very much so.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, all right. Negus, did you have any extra questions? I think that was mostly
No, I'm all done. I'm all good. It was excellent. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Do you guys have any final words, any messages to your Telegram users? I know there was one guy in there who said, Sherman, you know who I'm talking about. For the people who don't know, there was a gentleman in the Telegram who was fudding Raven before the IDO came out. But meanwhile, he was sliding in the DMs and telling me about how he wanted to buy the entire allocation. So, is there anything you want to tell any of your fans, Telegram members, possible companies who want to work with you, anyone watching this at all?
Fill before shill. I mean, this is the place to be, man. Like, you guys understand technology, and I mean, like Negus, for example, like you grilled us on the tech like over a year ago.
Yeah.
I remember that.
this is going to be a great place to learn about projects that are working on really deep technology because you guys actually understand it. There's going to be a lot of videos out just about, token sales, token metrics, and all these things. But you guys actually care about building blockchain technology.
Things that work, basically.
Follow this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Follow this
Thank
channel.
you.
Yeah, there it is, boys. If you care about blockchain or anything at all in your life, subscribe to the channel. So there it is. Give everyone your Twitter handles. I have them included in the video, but for the people just listening, give everyone your Twitter handles so they know how to follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At Greedy Ferengi.
I am at Sherman, SHERM, the number 8, N.
And I am curious_RV.
There it is. All right. I think that was it. I wish you guys the best. I think Raven Protocol is super cool. Again, I've looked at the tech offering, so a little bit of a shill here. I hold Raven. Yes, I do hold Raven. Sorry, guilty as charged.
As do I. Yeah.
I think it's a great project, especially at the market cap that it's at. I like the tech offering. I think it's super unique. And I hope it does great in the future. And I hope you guys do well in the future. And I will be supporting you guys from the sidelines. And
Best
you guys are
is
free
yet
to
to
come
come.
back on the show at any point in the future. We can go over some other topics.
Let's do an update sometime.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, that's it. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye, fellas.
Thank you.